everyone, this time I'm doing a pink pigment paste test to recreate the resin feather and silk effect that I got in my previous video. So I'm showing you the resin temperature and it's lower than in my first test where I got the feather and silk effect. The resin temperature now is 23 degrees. But I'm going to add the same amount of resin into my paper cup, 22 gram. And I'm also going to add the same amount of drops. And in my previous video, I used 10 drops. So now I'm also going to add 10 drops of the pink pigment paste. Yeah, I'm taking something out because I had too much gram in my cup. Now I'm going to add 10 drops, and this is my own pigment paste. It's called Pink Lady. You can find it in my Etsy shop. The link to it is in the description. Yeah, I want to see if I can recreate that nice feather silk effect that I got in my previous geoda tray, but now with a different color pigment paste for the edge. And we know that this uh, should be very opaque. And I also know that pink contains a lot of white, so that's also good. Now I'm going to pour a line against the first rim of the geoda tray. There you can see it. And this is a really nice silicone mold. It's a silicone mold for molds and shapes. And this silicone mold has three rims on the edge. Very nice. It creates a nice effect. So if you're interested, the link to their website is in the description below this video. And also my promo code for 10% discount. So that's really nice. And what I also need to mention, this silicone mold is 25 centimeters. So a little bit larger than the geoda tray I used in my previous video. Now you can see it, pushing it against the first rim of the edge. Adding a little bit more because we know that the line against the edge, if it isn't wide enough, then you don't get the nice effects. So that's why I'm adding a little bit more. Yeah, now I'm going to pour the resin into the center, then to the outside. Yeah, and I still need to figure out how much clear resin I need to pour, because that also is a factor to create an effect. If you pour too much, then you won't get any feather or silk effects. If you pour less, then also the effect will change. But now I'm pouring a lot, um, at least until the top of the second rim. Adding all my leftover resin into the center. There you can see it. I have something in my resin, so I take it out. Yeah, now I'm going to do it a little bit different than I did in my previous video. I'm also going to add a line of pigment paste on top of the clear resin. There you can see it, but also on the third rim of the silicone mold. I want to see what kind of effect I can create with doing this. Not too much, a thin line. Because in my previous video I added a clear layer of resin because the mold was not totally filled. But now I don't want to do that. So that's why I'm adding more pink resin. Now I'm filling the gaps. Yeah, and it's really so much fun to do all these tests and show it to you all. And after I'm done with all these tests, also in other silicon molds, I will show you the end results and then we can compare all the tests with each other. Using my torch to remove air bubbles, but keep in mind not too close to the silicon mold because, yeah, otherwise the resin will stick to your silicon mold and then the silicon mold is ruined. So now I'm adding more clear resin to fill the mold totally to the top. And the resin I'm using is from Resin Pro. It's a medium viscosity resin with a working time of 1.5 hours because I got a question what kind of resin I used. But the link to it is in the description below this video. So the first color I'm using is an alcohol ink from Ranger and it's called Flamingo. So very close to the edge I'm adding these drops because I know that the resin will flow to the center, and if I add these drops too far away from the edge, then I don't have a color on the edge. So that's why I'm doing it this way. So the second color is a resin ink from Etter Art, and it's called Elderberry. 2 drops. There you can see it. Very nice dark purple color. And the third color is also a resin ink from Etter Art, and it's called Grape Purple. So all the way around this color. And this is the mixture for the center. I used three different materials. So the first one is a mirror sand in the color White Sparks. You can find it in my Etsy shop. It's very sparkly. The second material is a crushed metallic glass in the color Bright Gold. And the third one is a supercharged glitter in the color Silver Pink. I add these materials in a paper cup and then I add a little bit of resin, not too much, and then I add it into the center of the geoda tray. And I can already see that the resin doesn't move that fast to the center. Maybe I think it's because I filled the mold totally to the top. But yeah, it can change a lot during drying time. We already saw that in my previous videos. So this is a close-up right after pouring. The colors are very nice. There are some nice effects, but as you can see, it doesn't move that fast to the center. But that isn't a problem. It also can be nice if it doesn't move to the center. Then you have more transparency in the center part of the geoda tray. So this is 1 hour later. It did move, but not all the way to the center. Some nice effects. I can already see some silk effects on the edge, but not as much as in my previous video. And also some feather effects in the pink, but it's not all the way closed. The pink color doesn't flow all the way to the center. And I think it's because I filled the mold totally to the top. But I can do a test with that. So it's 24 hours later. Now I'm going to take the Cascade geoda tray out of the mold. And that goes very easy. No problems with that. And I'm also going to compare this one with my first test. But as you can see, the pink color didn't move all the way to the center. I also don't like that center that much. But who knows, maybe the other side is pretty. I like the effects on the outside with the lines that go from the inside from the outside to the inside. I also have some silk effects, not much. There you can see it. Now the other side. Yeah, it's pretty, but I don't like the center that much. And what I already mentioned, all the color moved to the center. Now I'm going to compare them with each other. This was my first test. I only used resining. The temperature was 27 degrees and I added 10 drops of white. So the change is the color of the edge, a different pigment paste, but also the temperature. And this is my second test. And I used also alcohol ink in this one. And I filled it all the way to the top. So a lot of changes that can affect or influence the effect you want to create. So this is the end result. Yeah, there are some pretty parts in this geoda tray, but I don't like the center. But that isn't a problem. It's a test. It's an experiment. And I'm going to do a lot more. The colors are nice. And the pink pigment paste does work. There you can see a little bit of the feather effect. And also on the edge, in some parts, the silk effect. A little bit closer. So all the materials I use in this video you can find at the end of the video, but also in the description below this video with a link to the website. So if you're curious, please check out the description. And I also have several promo codes that you can use for a discount. So this is the side how I poured it. Yeah, you can see some silk effect. There you can see it. Not much. But for sure I'm going to do more tests in this Cascade geoda tray mold to recreate the silk effect and the feather effect because I like it very much. So if you like this video, Don't forget to give me a thumbs up. I will appreciate it a lot, and it will help my channel to grow a little bit. Yeah, some nice effects and some feather effects there in the pink. But I know now that the pink pigment paste also works for these effects. Yeah, you can see the silk effect a little bit. So I want to thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!